me a vina through which your music plays. Make of me a golden flute, O Krishna, that you play. Give me every word to sing, I'm speechless without thee. Then touch my heart with thy sweet love, and play your song through me. Please play your song through me. Purify my little mind and let it rest in thee. Let not the burdens I must face come between you and me. Let my soul sing out to thee in thy unending song, and bring me to thy blessed feet, that holy place I long for, that holy place I long for. May I always hear your song in birds and wind and sea, and may I always see your face in creation's majesty. Let thy name fill up my mind and fill my heart with your love, till I am one with your music, and we are one in love, and we are one in love. Shower us with thy sweet grace that flows around and around us. May we see you in each face by thy precious love that surrounds us. Let thy song fill up the sky and sound for all to hear, till we all sing in harmony with thy song that's ever so dear, with thy song that's ever so dear. Make of me a vina through which your music plays. Make of me a golden flute, O Krishna, that you play. Give me every word to sing, I'm speechless without thee. Then touch my heart with thy sweet love, and play your song through me. Please play your song through me. Please play your song through me.
Good morning. This morning the topic is going to be kind of related to next Saturday's event. Next Saturday's event is the 75th anniversary of the founding of the convent. And many people have asked, well, what is monastic life? I remember I got one call, probably 30 years ago, and someone called and they said, you're a nun, right? And I went, yes. Do you have a life? And, it took me a couple minutes to go, yeah, I guess I do, because I'm really quite happy, so I guess I have a life. But people do wonder, what is monastic life? I don't know what it is in other convents and monasteries. I know I've read the Benedictine rules of what life should be, okay? And we follow some of them. But I found that Swami Madhavananda, one of our past presidents of the order, and one of the swamis who came over and dedicated the temple, had written out what monastic life was about in the Ramakrishna order. He had 11 points that make up monastic life. The first one, serve the order to the best of one's ability. Always contribute your part. Okay, but who judges what's the best of your ability? Only you can know if it's the best. Some people can do it very, very quickly, and it seems to go very well. Other people, it takes a long time. But if we each look at ourselves and what we're doing, are we doing it to the best of our own personal ability? Because all the work we do is worship of the Lord. We don't just work. As soon as we move into or take up a monastic life, we have given over our bodies, minds, and souls to the Lord and to the order. So we can judge if we're doing our best, and we're the only person who can. Now, when we first move into the convent, we sometimes rush it. And there is always someone to tell you, no, you don't do that. You do the very best you can. You make sure every spot is off that copper and brass that's up on the altar, because those belong to the Lord. You make sure every olive is off the path, the front path, because this is God's house. And it takes a few years to put that in your mind so that it's always there. But we have to look at ourselves. And one of the things we can't do in this first admonition of Swami Madhavananda is limit ourselves right off the bat. Oftentimes we're given jobs we've never had any kind of experience with. I mean, we're asked to go out and plant 15 acres with jojobas. Who knew how to do that? Not any of us. But you do it. You don't say, I can't do that. Oh, that's not possible for me. Because we develop the attitude that anything is possible. And with God's help, I can do anything. So then the second admonition of Swami Madhavananda is to forego our own interest for the interests of the order. This is a great help in annihilating our ego and our selfish desires. Selfish desires don't really have a place in spiritual pursuit. Now, this is I'm giving you a really very strict admonitions that are given for monastics. Householders, of course, put these things into action with modifications because you can develop your life. The first thing, to do your best in any job. Now that's just plain good sense. You don't sit there and put in time. You do your best, and it will be to your advantage, but it helps if you offer it to the Lord. Foregoing our own interests for the interest of our family or of our business, if we have one, is always beneficial to ourselves as well as to the family and the people we're working for, because it does help us to wipe out our selfishness. And selfishness is one of the big obstacles in spiritual life. The other thing is to maintain a positive attitude. Maintain positive attitudes and send out love to everyone. Don't, if you try and maintain a positive attitude, you won't be complaining about what other people are doing. If you do the first two, you have already given up what other people are doing and looking at yourself. This is what monastic life is about. Now, the other thing we always think, all jobs are equal. Every single job that is done on this planet is equal to every other job. Maybe not in monetary recompense, but in service, they are all important. Everything is important, or we would not have the life we have. There was a story in Ramayana, or one of them anyway. Sita and Rama are sitting up in Vaikuntha, and Sita is saying, "Oh, wouldn't it be wonderful if everyone had palaces and no one had to work and everything was taken care of? You could do that, Rama." And so Rama did. And suddenly Sita said, "But why is the garden looking so bare?" Well, the gardeners don't have to work anymore. They have a palace of their own. Well, where's our food? Well, the cooks don't have to work anymore because they have their own wealth and palaces. Well, what about taking care of the horses and the animals? Oh, they don't have to work either. Everyone is absolutely equal. All of them have what we have. And Sita said, "Oh, but that doesn't work in the world." And that's what we have to look at. Every single job, no matter how menial or how odious it is equal to doing the worship in this temple. It's equal to being the CEO. You couldn't have a CEO without all the people under you. So we have to remember that when we see people working extremely hard at what we consider menial jobs. The ideal of our order is plain living and high thinking. Okay, we live in Montecito. We have a beautiful property. We have a house full of antiques. Is that plain living? It is, because we haven't sought any of them. They have all been gifts, and comforts that are readily available may be accepted. But if they're taken away, we don't miss them. It actually, if everyone kind of practices this, or makes an attempt to say, yes, I have all of these lovely things, but if they're suddenly gone, as they were in the fire and the mud debris flow, not to be devastated by it, not to be absolutely, completely devastated, to know that you can come back, to know that you yourself are whole. Your things are gone, but they're only things. They're only possessions. They're not intrinsic to your character. They're not intrinsic to your personality. They're not intrinsic to your faith. They're just, as was quoted in the newspaper at the time, it's just stuff. So when you can practice that no discontent at the absence of the things that you've gotten used to, that's the part that your spiritual growth is about. Not to feel, well, I don't have this, I don't have that. Oh, if I had that, I'd be so much better. If I had. Oh, I don't. They have. Who are they? We were talking about that the other day. They say. Now, who are they that influence our lives so much, or used to? The sixth one of Madhavananda's aspects of monastic life is, Swamiji said, work is worship. If you carry out your duties properly, your spiritual practices also proceed smoothly. Many of us are trying to meditate and set up a regular routine of spiritual practices. Now, if we follow what Swamiji says and we do our work as worship, it's easier to sit down and meditate because your mind has already made some progress in thinking of the Lord. As Brother Lawrence, in his book, The Practice of the Presence of God, this is something we can practice anytime, anywhere, no matter what we're doing. Hiking up a trail, cleaning the house, vacuuming the drapes, terrible job. Get the spiders out. Cleaning the bathroom, cleaning the kitchen. If you practice that that the Lord is with you all this time, doing it with you even, then you have already started to train your mind so that when you sit down to meditate, it's not that difficult to place your mind, visualize your chosen ideal, say your mantra, clear your mind of all of the nonsense that fills it during the day. I mean, I remember when I first sat down to meditate, and I was always cooking here. So I'd sit down to meditate, and after half an hour, I had planned the week's menus, I had done the shopping, I had decided what was okay and what wasn't okay, and who could eat what, and I hadn't thought of God once, but I had really done my work. I had straightened it out in my head. Now, that is perfectly normal. Because one of the first things that happens when you sit down to meditate is you go over what you have to do. You make lists in your head. However, if you have set up a practice of inviting God, or what would Jesus do, what would Buddha do, if you think of that as you're doing things, then sitting down and focusing your mind on your spiritual practice becomes very easy. The seventh admonition was synthesize the yogas, because that develops character. Now, I think everyone's fairly familiar with the 4 yogas. If you practice karma yoga, which is work is worship, you have to balance it with Raja Yoga, which is sitting down quietly and quieting your mind, meditation. You have to have those two balanced. At the same time, if you practice devotion and you love the Lord, you have to balance it with discrimination. If you don't balance the love and devotion with some discrimination, you become sentimental. You become a sentimental kind of woo-woo. If you use too much discrimination, you become cold-hearted. If you do too much work without balancing it with meditation, you become overactive and you can't sit down. If you do too much meditation, which not that many people can, they can sit maybe, but they're not really you have to balance it with, you have to do work even sitting and trying to calm your mind is work, but you must do some physical work too. So it's important in our order to synthesize the 4 yogas. Our monastic day is set up to do that. Meditation 3 times a day, what we call our karma yoga section, which is assigned jobs around the convent. And in the afternoon, some gardening, some study on your own. And as one of our monks always said, have a hobby. Always have a hobby that you can also direct to the good of the order, to the benefit of humanity. One of our monks, in fact, the monk who is in charge of Washington, D.C., is a master woodworker. He has built the shrines that are in 3 or 4 of our centers. His woodworking is exquisite, and that's where he has such pleasure doing it. He also cut off his finger a year ago, and they put it back on, and he says, no, it's fine, I still do. It's bound to happen when you're working with saws like that. No resentment about it, nothing. He just continues doing his woodworking. Beautiful, beautiful work. But you have to synthesize those 4 yogas to have that kind of character that doesn't go way up with disasters and way down with, or way up with the celebrations and way down with disasters. You have to, by synthesizing, you build a calm, level plane of mind. Now, it doesn't sound exciting, but you can live your life peacefully, doing everything you do right now. Everything you do practically, but peacefully, not being pulled and pulled and pulled by everything event that happens. Okay. The 8th one, after you've developed the character, the 8th admonition of Swami Madhavananda was ulterior motives, petty desires, thirst for power, hankering after name and fame, have no place in our lives. And these are insidious little things that creep in especially when you're taking up a monastic life. We don't have to work for our living. By the grace of God and the grace of our devotees, our food is provided. We have a place to live. We don't have that on our minds, which is why we, as monastics, are admonished to have these other things, to work on our minds to be able to be of benefit to society and ourselves. But when we think about ulterior motives, well, let's see. If I do the decorations just perfectly, everyone's going to say, oh, that was beautiful. But that is the feeling we cannot have. The feeling that we're told to have and practice is I am doing these decorations for the Lord. That's the only person or the only being that I must please. And as soon as I've offered it, it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks or I have offered my very best. Now, thirst for power, that's even more difficult or name and fame. Everyone would like to be recognized for what they do well. No one likes to be recognized for what they do poorly. That's really a pain in the butt. I remember when I was very new in the convent, Swami Pravrajika was down in Hollywood, and I was taking food to the hospital. He was in it, and I was walking out the door. I can't say I was feeling kind of special, but it was probably there, and I hadn't quite gotten it to the foreground yet because there were only two of us that could cook for him at that point. So it was kind of a special duty. And he, as I turned around and walked out, he said, "Vanity, vanity, all is vanity, save the Lord." And I turned around and I looked at him and he said, "Praise and blame, two sides of the same coin. You accept one, you must accept the other." Because they always accompany each other. If you get praise, let me tell you, the blame will come. If you get blamed for something, the praise will come. But you have to be equal-minded in both. Just know that it is not, you have detached yourself from that. You have made your offering, you have done your work, and you have let go of it. Because the world is always going to praise and blame. We can see that every day in the newspapers, every day on television. Someone does something and it's really good, and the next day someone's blaming, looking at the negatives of it. I mean, that happens constantly. Okay, the ninth admonition is specifically for monastics. Our purpose is not to do something extraordinary or shine wonderfully, but to serve the order in a responsible manner according to our capacity. That will be sufficient. Now, think about that, because that actually can apply to anyone. Not everyone's going to be a rock star. Not everyone's going to get to the very top of their field. However, if we all do our work responsibly, we will be an integral part of the entire picture. And that is sufficient. There can be one person with the huge, well, I think back on, I didn't know about the women in Florida who had been the human computers that sent the first men into space. And when I saw the movie about them, I thought, yeah, they got no praise. They got nothing. And here they were probably the most important part of the whole space program. And they were doing all that, what we now have computers to do. They were doing all that mathematics, all of those calculations. And they had men's lives at stake. And they did it superbly. Now, how many years has it taken for them to get any kind of recognition? I mean, that was in the 60s. The story of their greatness didn't come out until the 2000s. And then probably only because one or two people recognized it and said, this isn't right. They should be recognized. How many people knew about all of the work that was done during World War II to crack the code, the Enigma project, to crack the code so that our troops and fighters would not get obliterated by the Germans. Those people worked with absolutely no recognition. They couldn't tell anyone what they were doing. And yet they knew that if they didn't do it to their very best ability, that it would make a very big difference in history and in their lives as well as everyone else's lives. I don't know whether it takes extreme events to bring out that in most of us, but I would like to think that we could cultivate that habit and that character that says, I'm going to do the best with every single job I do. I don't know. I know that it comes out in disasters. People absolutely rise to the occasion. Almost all of them. Mobilize themselves and everything else. But it is sufficient to just do what you do to the very best of your ability. When I took sannyas, which is the final vows, one of the swamis, all the swamis gathered, and one of the swamis came up and he was giving me, at the time I was really nonplussed, he was giving me very good advice, but I was like, he was telling me, he said, now you know, the ordinary people are the ones who stay in the order. The exceptional ones with great talent can't stay. And you have to be ordinary. And I was like, seriously, I just stood there with my mouth open going, okay, I'm one of the ordinary ones if I'm going to stay. All right, I can be ordinary. But I think it took me 20 years to figure out what he was saying. And what he was really telling me was, yes, you can have exceptional talent in the order if you do not attach your ego to it. You must obliterate your ego and your selfish motive. In that way, you are ordinary. You must be able to do what the order tells you, when they tell you, and abnegate your selfish desire. But I remember hearing that, and I was standing right outside the front door, and I was just going, huh. Well, I mean, one of our nuns had just left, and she was extraordinary. And I thought, okay, well, she had to leave. Well, I don't know, maybe I'm just going to be, really ordinary, which was okay. That's fine. And we have to remember that we have Ramakrishna at the center of our order. Now, when I say Ramakrishna at the center of our order, that's where we focus our attention. But anyone can focus their attention on their own chosen ideal of God. And that will serve the same purpose as long as you keep that in mind, like, as I say, like Brother Lawrence, practicing the presence of God at all times. Not being swayed by events and people's moods and traffic and the road closures. That one's a really hard one for me right now. It seems like we can't get out. Every day we try and get out, and it has to be a different way because that ramp's closed. Okay. But if I make up my mind it's just going to take 15 minutes longer, I don't have any hassle. And how will these help? You have to practice them steadily, consistently, and sincerely, and they will work. It does work. But you can't give up just because it gets tiresome and you don't think you're making any progress. You just continue with that daily routine that includes the presence of God and your practices, and you will have results. You will be shocked at how differently you are when you meet people that knew you 15 years ago. And they go, oh, you've really changed. And you think you're sitting there going, I haven't done anything, nothing's happening. But that slow, subtle change of character is what we're doing. We're building our character, we're building our building devotion, building consistency, building focus. Because we do have to keep focused. For monastics, it's much, we're given an opportunity where it isn't as difficult for people who have to be worried about living situations, worried about family. But the reason we have this grace is because we gave it up early on in life. So, but it makes our path also more difficult because we have no excuse not to do this. The only excuse we have when we don't do it is our own mentally distracting ourselves, which is perfectly perfectly okay in many parts of life. I mean, we all seek distractions. But in monastic life, we really have no excuse because we are given every opportunity and everything. Now, if we can see God in every activity, then it's not so much a distraction. As Swami Sarvadevananda was saying last week, you have two different approaches. Either nothing is real in this life, which was his first Real ID lecture. All of this is a dream or an illusion, and when we wake up, we are one with Brahman. Or everything is real, as long as we're experiencing it. But if we do everything is real, then you must admit that it requires the constant assertion that everything we see is God, a manifestation of God. We can't pick and choose. We can't say, yes, this temple is a manifestation of God, but down there on Milpa Street it isn't. No, we have to go, everything is God, if we're going to do the tantric approach, which says where we affirm the entire world. And that's a philosophical choice that you make. And pursue your spiritual practice along that line. And sometimes you change. Like you start out with, this isn't real, this isn't real, this isn't eternal. And then you get to the point where no, it all is. And you switch. But often we have to start with the non-eternal to train our minds. And we do that using our work. We work, but we know that none of it is making a difference in all eternity. But we do it for ourselves and for our growth. We help other people at the same time, but basically it's to build our own character and to get ourselves closer to the divine and to uncover the divine within ourselves. Because that's what spiritual life is all about. Uncovering the divine that is within ourselves. Someone asked me, what do we mean when we say realizing God? Do you have a definite definition of what you mean Or is it kind of one of those lovely statements that sounds really good, but what do you really want to achieve? I had to think about it for a while. And for me, it's always been the same thing. I really want to see God. Which was I want to see God, like they said in the Bible. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. That made sense to me. And that hasn't quit. But we all have to find that. What do we mean when we say we want to realize God, we want to realize ourselves? And then we go on, how do we do it? You have to define your goal. I'm going to, now, someone asked me at the beginning, am I going to do some quotes? Oh, yes. I always have my quotes. Okay. We've been reading Swami Turiyananda's Spiritual Treasures on Wednesdays, and he has a lot to say about work. So the first quote I have from him is, "Take my word, nowhere do the scriptures advocate a stupefied state, a cessation of all activities, and mechanical withdrawing of hands and feet from work. In the state of, excuse me, I got new glasses and I can't find the place to read with them. In the state of ignorance, people work with the idea that it's their work. When one attains knowledge and develop devotion, one gets over that egotistic idea." Now, this is the other one that I think spoke to me. One should not babble in order to cover up one's inability. How many of us have done that? Well, I bet giving all the excuses right off the bat. "I shall repeat this 100 times. There is nothing greater than sacrificing one's body for spiritual sadhana. Patanjali said in his yoga aphorisms, disease, mental laziness, doubt, lack of interest, sloth, clinging to sense pleasure, false perception, lack of concentration, and unsteadiness in concentration are the distractions. These distractions are the obstacles to spiritual life." Now, I mean, when we take them one by one, we can say, yeah, that happens, because it does. But when we can get it firmly in our head that they are distractions, we don't have to get on that bus. We don't have to take that road. So always remember, his final quote was, always be prayerful. Work with your hands and pray to the Lord with your mind. That's it. So we'll stop there today with his quote. Oh, yeah, and go on without holding any doubt in your mind. None. Once you have given yourself and you do this work for the Lord, there is no doubt that you will get the results you seek. Okay.
We weave the fabric of our lives from all the things we've done. A multitude of colored threads in patterns continually spun. Our thoughts create the patterns from all in heart and mind. Then inspiration guides us as the colored threads unwind. Red and green, witch, gold and amber, black
Now I think we have announcements, yes. Got to find the announcement page. Okay, Saturday the 15th is the convent's 75th anniversary. The Diamond Jubilee. This is the first convent in the whole order of the Ramakrishna order, the first convent in the world. And it was started in 1947. So we'll have a celebration happening here in the temple on Zoom and YouTube. 10 a.m. we'll have an introduction by Swami Sarvadevananda. Then a message from Swami Smaranananda Ji, the president of the order. He is sending a message, and Sardeshaprana from Hollywood will read that message. Then we'll have a message from Swami Suvirananda, the general secretary, and I'll read that message. Vrajyaprana will then give a brief history of the convent, the founding of it, and we'll have a slideshow video presentation showing the first nuns and the first vows in Hollywood. Then they moved up here when the property was given. Then it was kind of half and half, and it still is kind of half and half. We have nuns in Hollywood, we have nuns up here, but it's all the same convent. That will, at 12 o'clock, we'll have puja here in the temple. Then from 1 to 2, we'll have lunch served for everyone. And 2 to 4, we'll have reminiscences by devotees and hopefully some nuns of the early monastics in this order, interspersed with music. Bordaprana, one of the very first 5 nuns, wrote a lot of music for the order, and we sing it all the time. When the choir sings their songs, it's almost always her music. If anyone's attended a memorial service, that's all music she wrote. She's put passages of the Bible to music, she's put the Gita to music, she's put all kinds of things, and has contributed greatly. Also, on Wednesday, the 12th, we have our regular reading of Swami Turiyananda's Spiritual Treasures. We will not have a gospel reading on Saturday the 15th in the temple because I think we're all going to be too busy with the event. Okay, and we'll end with the translation of a chant. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness unto light. Lead us from death to immortality. Light us through and through, and evermore protect us from ignorance by thy sweet, compassionate face. Peace, peace, peace be unto us all.